Hello, thank you so much for joining my channel, which is called Gardening with One Knee in Zone 5B, where I try to take the intimidation out of gardening and try to get you maybe a little bit more food independent to help with the grocery prices. I always am an advocate for growing your own groceries. And today I thought I would do a little bit different of a video instead of gardening because I don't really have anything going on right now. We had 2 inches of rain overnight. Now we have a snowstorm, and I shouldn't say snowstorm, but it's windy, it's driving snow. They put a tow ban out in the neighboring county. So it's gonna get slick out. But anyway, getting back to this, so I just thought I would do a little video to show you what I use to do all my food preservation with, in case you find sales, or maybe you go to rummage sales early in spring and you kind of know what you want to watch out for. First thing I'm going to show you is a water bath canner. Now this I got from one of my grandmas when they passed away, and it comes with a lid and this rack. This rack you will eventually, put all your jars in. See how nice the bottom is, so that nothing's going to slip through. And then you would just kind of fold these in. Well, you use 2 hands, but you fold them in and then you submerge everything into boiling water. You never want your jars to touch the bottom of your water bath canner. And that's because you're just asking for them to maybe crack and explode. I always kind of keep like one old washcloth in my water bath canner. This I kind of like to have like right next to the stove when I put my hot jars on it, and then I always have an extra one for when my jars come out of the water bath canner, because you don't want to do what you don't want to do is put your jars directly on the bottom or directly on a cool counter, because that could cause them to have like a stress fracture, and then they could burst in your water bath canner. That happened to me one time, canning pickles. The jar must have been pretty old and I must not have noticed the crack, and I put the lid on and I set my timer. When I went back, I opened up the lid, everything smelled like vinegar, and sure enough, there was a broken jar. Now the rest canned just fine. It was just that one. So I had glass and pickles, and it was a mess. I had to wash off all my jars that I was going to be able to keep. But that's one of the reasons why you don't want to stress your jars out. You don't want to clank them around a lot. Before you fill them, you always want to check to make sure there's no little chips around the top. But we'll go into that a little bit more too. So that's one method of canning, and I used this for many years. That's how I started out with canning. You can can things like tomato juice, spaghetti sauce, tomato sauce. I do enchilada sauce, ketchup, taco sauce, tomato paste in the water bath canner. I do jams and jellies in the water bath canner, pie fillings, pickles, any kind of pickled vegetable, whether you like pickled asparagus, pickled Brussels sprouts, you can do that all in the water bath canner. Sauerkraut, and I'm trying to think, applesauce. Things that cannot go in the water bath canner are beans, carrots, corn, any kind of meat, any kind of soups, because they're not acidic enough. You have to have a higher acidic value. Now I know some people out there, they do Rebel water bath canning, and they'll just let the items be in the water bath canner much longer and call it good. I don't do that, and I'm not going to promote that. Almost every canning cookbook out there has a little introduction, kind of explains the process, the do's, the don'ts, the whys, like why do you do this, why shouldn't you? So as long as you follow those rules, you're going to be good as gold. The other type of canner that I have, it's in a big box, is this. I'm not going to take it out of the box, but this is what they call a pressure canner, and you can see it's got the little gauge here, and I always can at 10 pounds of pressure here in my area. It comes with a little book, comes with some recipes, and this is, I just call this a wiggler. Some people call it a jiggler. It's actually called a weight, and when you get to your 10 pounds of pressure, you put this weight on, and then it usually takes about 90 minutes for pretty much all the batches. Now, even though it says 23 quarts here, that doesn't mean that you're going to put 23 quarts in there, not 23 quart jars. It'll hold 23 quarts of liquid. So I just wanted to kind of make that clear too. The water bath canners, they come with a rack on the, to put your jars on, but they only come with one. So you'd want to probably get a second one, because pint jars, half pint jars, anything smaller, you can double stack that. You can get quite a bit in there. Last year in July, I believe it was, I picked up, I can't remember how many pounds of ground beef. It was on sale, and I cooked it all down and I canned it all in jars. I cooked it down with some onion and I canned it all in pint jars. 1 pound of ground hamburger fits nicely into 1 pint jar. So whenever you're making something like chili or spaghetti sauce, it's really easy just to open up a jar and dump it in the pot with your tomato juice, your spices. If you are like me, you put some noodles in there of some type. You can put some beans in there. Beans are another thing that you'd want to pressure can. But once I started pressure canning, I expanded my pantry so much. There's so much variety on there. The world could shut down for weeks, maybe even months. I would say maybe even months. I have so much down there. I learned how to take a frozen turkey, pressure cook it in my pressure canner, then take it out and then take the meat off the bone and then pack the jars with the meat and then pressure can that. And then of course you have that really nice turkey broth, with like a turkey stock. Because when I do that, I usually put like a sliced up lemon, a couple onions, some celery, some carrots, some peppercorns, some herbs. I never use sage or beans because that can make it taste bitter. Did not know that. But anyway, it's no problem then for me to take a jar of turkey that's already cooked off the shelf, mix it with some vegetables, and make a turkey pot pie. So handy. You can make a turkey soup. I mean, I've canned turkey soup, turkey vegetable soup. I don't put noodles in my soups because they disintegrate and they turn into something worse than wet Kleenex. There's bleh. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up. So now, because I started with pressure canning, I've expanded the things that I can and keep on the shelf downstairs. Last year I canned, I think, like right over 400 jars, and it's a smattering of all sorts of different things, beef and turkey. I did like taco seasoned beans, so that like if I want to make nachos, I just crack open a jar of the taco seasoned beans. I did taco seasoned ground beef. Most of my stuff that I can like that that's seasoned, I will can in a little half pint jar. They call these jelly jars. That's only because if I'm going to do something like nachos, I'm only opening up this, and then if all of a sudden I get sick of homemade nachos and I haven't gone through all the meat, this is much less waste than if it was in a bigger jar like this. And I'll go through the jar sizes here in a little bit. But so now we've talked about water bath canning, we've talked about pressure canning. The other thing is a food dehydrator. Now this one actually came with 4 trays. I bought 2 more. And on the top, it kind of tells you exactly where you got to spin your dial for whatever you're dehydrating. So let's see here. For example, it says herbs and spices, 95 degrees, nuts and seeds, which I've never done. I'm just a little afraid of that. Nuts and seeds have oil in them, and oils and nuts and seeds, they can go rancid and just, make the nut. And then the main one that I usually use is fruits and vegetables, and I have made jerky also in these. Now, this is something extra that I've bought since I purchased. This didn't come originally with this, but these are trays to make fruit leathers, and I figured out how to do it. You have to add a little bit of pectin, and then they stay real soft and pliable, and where you can roll them up. So in the winter time, it's kind of nice that I can make some fruit leathers, and that's my fruit intake for the day. Otherwise, a lot of times I don't have fresh fruit on the counter here, because in the winter fruit's pretty expensive because it's got to get shipped in. The other thing that I had purchased separately are these little meshes, and these are really nice for tiny things like herbs, or I use these for onions. because the air can still flow through that and it doesn't fall through. Now, the racks look just like, oops, let me go put this here. The racks just look like this. So these are fine to put slices of potatoes, carrots, celery, peppers, anything like that. I've done apples, I've done strawberries like this, I've done cherries like this. These are plenty small where the stuff doesn't always fall through. Now, the other kind of cool thing is last year at the end of the year, they had peppers on sale at Aldi and I picked some up just so I would have some. This jar is 15 green peppers, all dehydrated and chopped up, medium size. And I put a note on here, 1 pepper is 3 teaspoons. So if I have a recipe that calls for some peppers, then I know. And I did that kind of strategically. I think how I did it was I put 2 peppers chopped up on 1 tray or something like that. I remember kind of pre-measuring it in my head. I do the same thing when I do carrots or celery, just so that there's a way of kind of labeling a jar to guide me, because you know, you would never guess this is 15 green peppers in here. You can hear they're nice and dry. So, and this isn't just a regular jar. This doesn't have to be in a canning jar. This, I believe, is an old grape jelly jar. So, and I have a little oxygen absorber in there. Now you can rehydrate these before you use them. So you could technically rehydrate what you need overnight. Or like if I know I'm gonna be cooking something like a soup and it's gonna simmer for a while, I just throw them in like that. But it's always probably a little bit better just to rehydrate, because then you're just getting them closer to the original texture. Some people are texture sensitive, so, but anyway, that's what I have to say about green peppers in the dehydrator. I've also done potato slices, and that's kind of cool because you can rehydrate those overnight in the refrigerator and then make raw fried potatoes in the morning for breakfast. Set that there. Let's see. That covers the food dehydrator. I'm just going to kind of push this out of the way a little bit. A couple other things going back to the canning. Here I am, bones. Oh, also too, this is a jerky press. So when we make beef jerky, you would fill up this tube. It's kind of like a spritz cookie press. You would put your meat in this tube and then just click your little gun and make your lines for your beef jerky. This food dehydrator, I think it was around $40. Don't quote me on that. And the trays and the extra, like the big circle thing and the extra meshes, we have a Homestead outlet here in our area. It's not a huge store, but you can get a lot of these kinds of supplies there. I bought my food saver there. I bought my apple peeler there. I usually get my food saver bags there, my oxygen absorbers. They have a lot of nice varieties of jerky seasonings, and it's kind of a cool store to go to because it's like the day, or how should I say this? Black Friday, that whole weekend, it's usually like buy one, get one. And I came home, I mean, I had to make like 2 trips out to my car, but I came home with little electric fry pans. I came home with a couple of those. That's when I bought my meshes and the circle things for making fruit leathers. I got that all on a really good sale. I came home with such a big assortment of things, and I only spent like $35. So I encourage you to kind of maybe check your area. I didn't even know that store existed. I drove by it a bunch of times and my neighbor said, yeah, I just got that at the Homestead outlet store. And I was like, what? So then she told me about it, and sure enough, it's just kind of cool. They make a lot of things for Nesco, not being sponsored. I'm not being sponsored for any of this here today. So a lot of their things that they sell are that product. So now I'm gonna go into, I should have done this when we were doing the canners. So you can use any kind of ladle. For years, I just used this old ladle that I got out of my mom's place when she passed away. And then recently I purchased one like this. This holds a 1/2 pint, and it's kind of cool because this is curved enough so that you can just kind of like scoop in the corners of your kettle and get everything out. And then if you're left-handed or right-handed, you can pour from either side or like that. It also has this little clip-on thing for the edge of your kettle. I paid about $10 for this, and I've given a couple of them away as gifts. They're pretty snazzy. I really, really like it more than I thought I would. But it's always good to kind of try things, and if you like them, then give it to your canning friends as gifts. The other thing is this little gadget. It's got a magnet on the end. So when you're canning, you want to moisten or warm up your lids in some sort of like hot water or boiling water. I usually just go with a scoop of hot water out of the water bath canner, put it in a bowl, and I put my lids in there. So keyword is boiling water, and you doesn't touch that with your fingers because you're gonna hurt yourself. But this little magnetic thing, you just put into the water and it pulls out one lid at a time. And you can put those lids on your jars wet. You don't have to dry them. You just always want to make sure your rims of your jars are clean. I use vinegar on an old towel just to kind of wipe that clean. Because if you have any residue, sugar, vinegar, I shouldn't say vinegar, sugar, tomato sauce, anything like that, that's going to prevent it from giving you a proper seal. And do I have jars that never seal? Yes, I do. And that's my fault. I know a couple times when I find a jar that doesn't seal, I'm like, why didn't this seal? And then I look at it, I'm like, oh, sure enough, when I checked the rim to see if it was chipped, I didn't think it was, but sure enough, there's a little chip in there, and then that prevents it from sealing. There could be defects with the lids themselves. The lids that I use have like a rubber circle around them. It's kind of, when you warm it up, it gets a little gummy. I shouldn't say gummy like it's sticky, but it gets a little tacky. It softens it up to kind of help give you a proper seal. But nothing here is perfect. I have things like that don't seal, and I just put it in the fridge and I'm like, okay, now I got jam I'm going to be eating for the next couple days. So just wanted to let you know, failures happen at my house. The other thing is one of these. This is a jar grabber. So let's pretend, now you would never put this lid in a water bath canner. This is something I'm going to show you in a little bit. But let's just say this is coming out of your kettle of hot water. You would just do this and bring it up and set it on your counter. This I feel is a must-have, because the regular tongs, whether it's from your grill or not, nothing else is going to work as nice as this. So I strongly urge you to get that. Then we are going to talk a little bit about a jelly strainer. This is a jelly strainer. You can kind of see from the picture how it's got a bag, and you just put your cooked fruit in the bag and you just let it drip into a measuring glass jar, I guess. I usually use a 4-cup measure. Sometimes it'll splatter around, but that's all part of it. I typically only use this when I make currant jelly, because currants are so seedy and they're very bitter. I shouldn't say bitter, very tart like a cranberry without making them into a jelly. So what I usually do is cook my currants down and then I just let them strain through this bag here. The other thing I want to show you too is just my little hack is I took an old muslin dish towel and I cut it in 4 using a pinking shears, so you can see that jaggedy edge there and all the stains. Those are just fruit stains. So I use this like when I make something like, say, fire cider. I will put this in my strainer so that it keeps out like all the little herb specks like your oregano and your thyme and stuff. And then your apple cider vinegar can drain right through this. And then I just wash it. So one of those towels made me 4 of these filters. I don't know. And you can see I've used it for fruit because these are all fruit stains, probably cherries or raspberries or strawberries. It doesn't always wash out 100%. But I just thought I'd share that little tip with you. We're going to talk a little bit about the different jars. Now, this here, we talked a little bit, this is a 1/2 pint jelly jar. And what's in here is just something that I tried for the first time last year. When I was making vanilla, I always slit my beans and scrape out the seeds a little bit. And for years, I've been tossing away the seeds thinking, blah, Then it was during apple season when I was making the vanilla extract. I thought, you know what, I'm going to put this, I'm going to save those seeds. I had a little tray of sugar that I put out and these seeds. And then I just kind of let it air dry a little bit. And then that's what this is vanilla infused sugar. I made some applesauce with the vanilla sugar and it brings it to a whole new level. So keep that in mind if you're ever making vanilla extract and you want to do something different with your beans. Here's a byproduct of that. So that is a half pint. Half pints also come in short little squats, I call them, and those are typically always wide mouth. Now there's differences in the jars. There is wide mouth and narrow mouth. Let's get some of these here. This here is a narrow mouth. This is good for like sauces, juices, things like that. I think I even use these when I put blueberries in like a sugar water to make like a blueberry syrup, and then I just add it with a clear soda or some water, some ice. I make blueberry lemonade, strawberry lemonade, cherry limeade. I do that all, and I usually make it in these. This jar would be more of like a concentrate, so you'll get maybe 2 to 3 glasses of, say, strawberry lemonade out of this. But anyway, this is the narrow mouth and this is the wide mouth. And you can't really see too much of a difference, but the lids are different, the rings are different. Here's another good example. Maybe it's a little better here. Difference between a narrow mouth and a wide mouth. I typically like the wide mouth jars because it's easier for me to fill and put larger things in like meat. I do always have some narrow mouth ones on hand though too. Reason being is a few years ago there was a lid shortage and you couldn't always get lids, so it was always good that you had a little bit of both size openings so that if you could get lids, then you had them for whatever jar they would fit. But anyway, this here is just like a little half pint of sauerkraut with caraway seed in. I use this on pizza, on salad. Sometimes I just take like a forkful out of it. Those are my probiotics for the day. So, but anyway, that's the half pint size. This here is a 1/4 pint size. This is fermented garlic in honey. And I usually make 1 or 2 of these jars for in the winter months with the smaller cloves. And then I just chew one up before bedtime. And that's to boost your immune system. If you swallow, I'm just going to set this stuff down behind me. If you swallow it whole, you're not going to get the whole effect of it because by chewing it up and grinding it, you're releasing a component called allicin, and that's actually the immune booster. And what you do is you peel your garlic, you ferment it in apple cider vinegar for about a month, and then you take out about half the apple cider vinegar and you replace it with honey, and you just kind of mix it up and you let it sit a few more weeks, and voila, there's your immune booster for the winter. So anyway, this is a pint jar. This is a 1/4 pint. I like these for like salsa and jams because then I don't get sick of it. And if I do get sick of it, or if it gets funky in the fridge, I'm not wasting as much as if it was in like a pint-sized jar or a half pint jar. But one of these usually is good for 2 of those little bags of like Doritos or something. It's for salsa. So just kind of keep that in mind. They also make these little teeny tiny ones for herbs. This one has actually shiitake mushrooms in it, but they come in a package like, let me see here. Like this. It's just a little 4-pack. And when I first started buying these, and this was probably my first set I bought was maybe 10 years ago, they were like $4.99, and now I believe I've seen them for like $7.99, $8.99. So they've jumped in price, but I think that's just a sign of the times. Let me set that somewhere. When you buy jars, they're usually always in a case. Again, I'm not being sponsored. This is just what I grabbed out of the basement. So these are the little 1/4 pint jars. Comes in a dozen. These in a dozen, these are usually around, I'll say $10 or so, somewhere in there. The smaller ones are going to be obviously the less expensive because it takes less material to make them. They will come with a lid and a ring automatically, so you don't have to buy those. I think the pint size like this, I think those usually run about $12 for a dozen. The quarts I just bought, this is freeze-dried saltwater taffy. The quarts I just bought a case of and they were $14.99. When you buy them brand new like that in a case, they always come with the lid and the ring. You can always reuse these rings from year to year to year to year. You just have to have a new lid. And then this here is a half-gallon jar. And I use this when I make apple cider vinegar. And for many years I was making my own sauerkraut just by a head of cabbage or two at a time. I've advanced since then where I make a lot more at once. But yeah, so that's what the half-gallon size looks like. The other thing is sometimes when you're buying lids, they're gonna come as a set with more rings and lids. This was given to me as a gift some years ago, and I'm never gonna turn away something like this, but I still have it. And the only thing you really have to buy new for your next batch of whatever you're making are the lids. And the lids come in little boxes of 12, and they are about, I would say around $4 for the narrow mouth, and probably $5 for 12 for the wide mouth. And you can get that in any food preservation area at the store. They usually sell all this stuff all in the same area. The other thing here, this is my food chopper. I got this maybe 15 years ago. And all you do is I use this for onions. All you do is you open it up this way, get your blade on, and then put your lid back on, and do this. That's all it is. I usually cut up my onions outside when I'm doing things like spaghetti sauce and taco, or spaghetti sauce and salsa. The mess stays out there, your eyes don't water, and I just sit out there on a table and I clean them. I throw all the chopped ones in a great big stainless steel bowl, and then I'll measure them out. Most of my recipes call for between 2 and 6 cups. So I'll measure out some bags in 4-cup portions, and then a lot of them in 2-cup portions, so that I can just kind of take a 4-cup and a 2-cup and call it good for a batch of spaghetti sauce. Or I can take a 2-cup one and divide it in half for a batch of salsa maybe. I don't freeze 6 cups at a time, even though that's what the recipe calls for, just because it's going to be a waste of a gallon-sized bag. I can freeze 4 cups, I believe, in a quart bag. So that's that little tidbit there. The other thing next is a vacuum sealer. Now this I got a couple years ago. Of course, it's on the cord. But this is all it is. You put your food in a bag, you line it up here, you press it down. You have the choices to seal only or to vacuum and seal. So let's say, for example, you get chicken breasts on sale. You can put them in bags to make smaller portions. I vacuum seal 1 chicken breast at a time. Takes all the air out, you're not gonna have freezer burn, and it's only one then to thaw out for me in my case. But this is another good investment that I made. Oh yeah, going back to jars. They do have these really cute fluted jars. There's a good picture. These hold, I believe, 1 pint. And last year I made some blueberry syrup and some cherry syrup. So I have that downstairs in these. Every now and then too, and I'm not being sponsored by Ball, but I just want to make an awareness out there that every now and then they introduce a cute 4-pack of what they call collector jar sets. Last year it was their 140th year, I think, in business. So they had a 140th year anniversary 4-pack. And I think it had like stars on it. It was pretty cute. And then for maybe the last year or 2 years maybe, they've been selling the 4-pack called the Honeybee, and it's got little bees etched in the glass. They're really cute. Nice gifts for your canning friends. One person that I know, I gave her some, or I shouldn't say that, I was telling her about them. She goes, I never heard of such a thing. And she went to the store, and sure enough, she picked up some. The other thing too is whenever you're buying things brand new, they can be flawed. And I'm not sure how easy this is going to show up here, but right here, there's a dent in the glass. It's almost like if somebody had their finger here when it was hot. I don't know, but can't see it straight on. But if you, let's go back to this side. I think this is the best. Right there, you can kind of see that curvature. This is something I would never, ever, ever put into any type of canner, just because the space inside is a little, what would you say? A little damaged. It's not as perfect. It's not, something like this is not designed to handle any kind of pressure. So I just keep this one aside. Another thing that's out there and available are, not this one, this. So let's just say you want to start fermenting some cabbage and make it into sauerkraut. This here, these little springs are what I started out using a long time ago. You shred your cabbage. In my case, I didn't have a cabbage shredder back then. I do now. But what I do, I would just wash my cabbage and then just slice it up really thin. You want it to be about the thickness of about a dime. And then I would just stuff it in my jars. I would use a wide mouth jar. I'd take my fist and I'd push it down as tight as I can. Growing up, we made sauerkraut. So I kind of had the whole concept in my head. Of course, you know, like my uncle, he says, well, use a milk house ladle of salt when we're doing the big, you know, crocks. Milk house ladle of salt. I ended up measuring it one year and it came to about 1 3/4 cups, but I had to know, you know. But anyway, going back to this, so you shred up you slice up your cabbage real thin, let it kind of, you kind of like, I don't know, you squish it and kind of bruise it up and you let those liquids come out. Then you pack it in a jar, you push it down with your fist. And then what I usually do is I cut a circle from a cabbage leaf out and then I put that on top. Then I put the spring and then I screw the little lid on. And the lids for fermentation have this here. This is just like a little silicone piece that lets air escape. And when you're fermenting stuff, you're going to see little air bubbles. In fact, when I use these, when I would do like a jar like this or a jar like this, you know, I would ferment cabbage and then I would put this in a bowl because sometimes there gets to be so much juice that it starts to spill over. I usually put this in a cupboard in the dark and I just let it there for, I don't know, a month or so. You can kind of check it at about the 2 or 3 week stage. Some people don't like it as sour, but I find that a month is pretty much my happy place. If you're doing this in the wintertime and your house is cooler, it might take a full month. If you're doing this in the summertime, like when I do my sauerkraut in the summer, it usually only takes 3 weeks because, you know, it's 70 degrees in the house or so. But I just wanted to show you that as an option. The other thing with fermentation, let me get this here for us. Oh yeah, I forgot to show you using a funnel for your jars. So that would be when you're filling your jars, put your funnel on and then you'll have less of a mess on the top here. This looks like this is going to be the last couple things. This here is a fermentation kit. And it comes with a cookbook. I shouldn't say a cookbook, but it'll have things in here like kimchi, sauerkraut, things like that. And I always kept this in the box. And the reason being is they have these glass weights. Let me see if I can pull one out. Yeah. So these glass weights, this is another way that you can make sauerkraut is by, if you have the little springy things, this kit would replace the spring. And then this would go on top of your sauerkraut. This is a weight to keep everything below the liquid line. You want to have everything below the liquid line when you're making sauerkraut. You want what they call an anaerobic environment, meaning no air. So your things below the liquid line are going to ferment. It also comes with these little, I don't know what you call them, like nipple kind of things. Ugh, so difficult. Oh, why did I just do that? There. This looks like this, and there's a little hole thing there to let air escape. So then you just put this in your ring, and then you put that on your jar. And then you'll just let your items ferment that way. This kit also came with, I don't know what they call this, cabbage pounder. I don't know, cabbage pounder. But this is a good way for you to bruise up your cabbage. Once you have your cabbage all sliced up real thin and it's in that big bowl, you can use this, or you can just use this and bruise up your cabbage so that those juices start to get released. This is kind of nice though for in the jars because it fits right into the jar really nice. So you wouldn't have to really use your fist like I do, but I'm kind of primitive that way, I guess. Of course, there we go. So yeah, that's a fermentation kit. This was about $50. Water bath canner, that I think they sell around $40. You'd have to buy the rack separately, I think. The pressure canner, I got that for, I want to say about $95 at the end of the season. It was marked down, but I think they're usually like around $130 and more. This was $50. I'm trying to give you prices so that you know what to kind of budget for. The last thing is one of these apple peelers. That's a better picture. I'm not going to take it out of the box, but this part here, this clamps onto your countertop, and then you put your apple in here. This part here pulls way back. You jab your apple on there, and then you just spin it, and it peels it. And then it'll also be kind of somewhat sliced, and it'll hold the core on this spirally part. So if you're doing a whole bunch of apples, it makes the job go a lot easier. I like to make apple cider vinegar at the same time as I'm doing apples for like applesauce or apple pie filling. And that's when you just take the cores and the peelings and you just fill them in a jar like this, and you let them turn a little brown for a day or two, and then you fill it with some distilled water, or not tap water. You don't want city water in there because of the chlorines, chloramines. Some places still put fluoride in there. You want like reverse osmosis water or bottled water or something like that. And then you add a little bit of your previous batch of apple cider vinegar with the mother, and it'll create the mother. And if you have a SCOBY mat, you can add that in there. And then, yeah, then you're on your way to not only making applesauce, but you're also making apple cider vinegar. I might do a video about that too down the way. So I think I covered everything that I have here. I also bought one of those big kind of like cabbage shredder things. The first time I ordered one, it came in and the wood was cracked. And I was trying to be cheap, and I ordered the smaller version, and there's just no way even a quarter head of cabbage would fit in that. So it was cracked. I returned it, and then I bought the larger one. And the larger one, I can fit like a half a head of cabbage in and do it that way. Last year was the first year that I had that, and what I did was I had my cabbage I was sitting out in the garage with an oscillating fan blowing on me. I kept the mess all out there, and I did my sauerkraut out there. But that was a good investment. I think though that shredder was around $100 if I remember right, but it's still worth the money. It went so fast. I did, I want to say like 25 pounds of cabbage. Anyway, it came out to, I think I ended up with like 9 quarts and a couple, maybe 6 half pints and maybe 6 quarter pints. I can some in quarts because I make matanki. Sometimes it's called platski. Sometimes it's just referred to as a sauerkraut pancake. It's a European kind of thing where you take your sauerkraut, some cracklings, which are the parts that float up from rendered pork lard, some flour, some pepper, and you kind of mix that up and you roll it out real flat. You bake it on a cookie sheet in a hot oven, and it comes out. It's not, when I say pancake, it's not sweet. Sometimes they call them sauerkraut squares or sauerkraut crackers. We just call it matanki, and it's just real delicious. It's a little bit of a treat. So anyway, I hope this kind of helped you to kind of maybe get organized. Like I said, I didn't always have all this stuff. You know, I'm getting up there in age, so I've acquired some of this stuff as I got older, but for probably 20 years or more, I just did water bath canning. And, you know, I didn't have a huge variety, but as I introduced more and more things of preserving my food, I feel like I have such an assortment downstairs that I'm not ever worried about going to the grocery store. The other thing I have is a little chest freezer. I think it's like a 7 cubic foot, and that was about $150. Boy, I think that thing's about 15 years old. But that to me is valuable real estate. It's kind of special that something's in the freezer, but what if that freezer goes out? Then everything that's in there, I'm gonna have to hustle and process and get it canned or dehydrated, something like that. It's more of a convenience, I shouldn't even say convenience step. There's a lot of things in there, like I have leftover strawberries from last year, but I'm using those when I make fruit leathers. There's currant juice in there because I didn't have enough currant juice to really make a batch of currant jelly. So I just froze the juice and then I'm going to add it to whatever I pick this year. There's elderberries in there, there's cracklings in there. But if the power would go out or if that thing would fail, I would have to do some hustling where everything else that's preserved in jars, you know, on the shelf, well, that's not a good example, but you know, like the sauerkraut and soups and stuff like that, that's all shelf stable. That stuff will be fine for anywhere from a year to 2 years, 3 years maybe. I've already opened up tomato juice that was 4 years old. I just kind of lost track of it on the shelf and I opened it up, I smelled it, I took a little taste, perfectly fine, I made chili with it. That's the other thing too, when you open up your jars of canned food, if you give them a sniff and they smell a little off, then don't use it. They always say too, when you're storing your jars on the shelf after canning, take the ring off and just have the lid on here, because the ring might hide like a false seal. It might look like it's sealed. Every now and then I go down in the basement, I take a little inventory and I can just kind of pop or touch the tops because I don't want them to bounce. If they bounce, then that means the seal has been compromised and your contents are compromised and you're going to want to dump that. When you have that happen and you dump it, check your jar. See if there's maybe a little crack in here. Maybe there's a little crack on the lid. It could be something that simple. So that's just kind of like the beauty of having things on a shelf downstairs. So I hope this video was informational. It kind of went a little longer than I thought. That's me. I hope this video was a little inspirational and, you know, kind of start watching for things that'll help you make your gardening season worth saving. You know, like I said before, I'm an advocate of growing your own groceries. And wouldn't it just be nice that in the summer months you can work on making a little bit of taco sauce or spaghetti sauce or salsa, and then you have that on the shelf, and that's one less thing that you have to drag back from the store. I always dread carrying jars of food home from the grocery store in the wintertime because I know myself, I will fall out in the driveway and I will have broken jars. So it's just kind of nice to eliminate that step and just have them downstairs on the shelf. So I hope this video was helpful, not overwhelming. Pick a method, maybe 2 methods. Maybe you can work together with a neighbor or another family member. Kind of make yourself a little bit of a co-op. You know, you can bargain and barter and trade things. Somebody that you're related to might have an apple tree or 2. You can get your apples from there, but, you know, be prepared to swap some of your tomato juice or something. I've done that too. So I don't always have everything. We have a Mennonite store close by and you can order things like apples and blueberries, and they do, I think, tomatoes and pickles. And like last year, for example, I ordered apples and blueberries. Their produce is wonderful. I have no complaints there at all. So I feel like I got really lucky, and they were quite a bit cheaper than in the store. So anyway, with that, I'm going to let you go. Thank you for joining me. Please like, follow, share, subscribe, tell all your friends. And we'll have another video shortly. We'll be going back to gardening, but I just wanted to kind of give you some ideas so that you can kind of start shopping, because if you're going to buy anything like all at once, like a canner and a bunch of jars and lids and, you know, whatever, it'll be expensive. So if you can do it little by little, it won't be such a punch in the gut when you're at the store and you have to hand over a lot of money for everything that you purchase. All right, thanks so much for joining me. It was a pleasure. Have a great day. Bye.